Hello, it's your girl. How should I introduce myself? I won't. I'll link the first video in this series that has my name. You can go check that out if you want to. But I'm back. Um, and doing a recap of October. You know, here in the US, we're still waiting on important election results. So doing stupid, well, not stupid, but doing non-serious things to pass the time. Let's call that. Anyway, back to October. So I actually read 11 books in the month of October. Here they are, and as always, the order I finished them in October, from the earliest finished to the latest finished. Yes. So, first book I finished in the month of October was The Preserve by Ariel S. Winter. I gave this book 3 stars. Okay, so humankind is kind of like on reservations, I guess, maybe concentration camps, designated areas, um, where they can live. And there's a murder among the humans, and the whole thing is like, we've got to figure out who did it before the robots decide to like be extra hard on us. Um, I gave it 3 stars. I'm not really a super fan of, but I continue reading them in the hopes that one will like super turn me. Because I remember being a bigger fan when I was in high school, let's say. Um, but I keep reading robot stories, but I'm not a fan of robots or the idea of robot supremacy or whatever. I gave it 3 stars. Um, I don't know if it was trying to make these extra hard hitting metaphors. If it was, it didn't land for me. They didn't stick. So that one got 3 stars. The second book I read in the month of October was A Very Merry Holiday Guide by Rachel McMillan. This book was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Um, I read it right before, obviously November, um, right before the really meaty part of the Christmas holiday season starts. Um, so it was funny. It got me really primed. I was really excited to do crafts after reading it, but mostly it's about Christmas movies to watch. Like it's like it takes a lot of Christmas movies, divides them into sections thematically, and if you're wanting to maybe host a Christmas movie watching party, suggestions on how to do it, what you might want to make, what you might want to include, fun games to do. So this was fun. I gave it 4 stars. Um, yeah, because I don't. It went really far with like the Christmas stuff, but I'm sure there are people who would like think this is a perfect book, but like I'm not that Christmas person, at least not yet. I don't think I ever will be, but I thought it was really fun. It got me really primed for the feeling of the season. So 4 stars for that. Next book I read was The 12 Days of Christmas by Lara Hawthorne, and I gave that 4 stars. Um, lovely illustrations. Um, wasn't the most traditionally Christmas themed in terms of like there weren't a bunch of people in a snowy landscape, but Christmas is celebrated many different ways all around the place. So lovely illustrations, 4 stars. Next book I read was Ghost Towns of Route 66, The Forgotten Places Along America's Famous Highway. Jim Hinckley. This was, I feel like, an important read for myself because at least my understanding of the United States. Um, I don't ever see myself visiting a lot of these areas when I don't have a car. Two, like safety reasons, I'm not sure a lot of these places I would feel safe in. Um, but just seeing the history of this classic Americana image get so flippantly second-handedly destroyed because a highway shifted, that was really interesting. Um, but I do think that the book was best geared towards people who are already either familiar with the history of Route 66, maybe the area, people who maybe go visit these locations on a regular basis, travel, do the road trip thing on a regular basis. I'm not those people, but I thought it was interesting from a historical standpoint. So I gave that one 3 stars. The next book I read was Night Vision by Teresa Chung. Initially, when I got this book to read, I thought I was going to, do a field test, follow all of the suggestions, the practices, try and actively see, test it out, test the book out, test the book and its suggestions out. I haven't necessarily done that with any other like how-to type book, but for whatever reason, I thought that's what I was going to do. I didn't do that, but I did read the book in its entirety, and some things I took away, some things I questioned. I felt they were a bit general, but I thought it was an overall enjoyable read. I gave that one 4 stars as well. Next book I read was a graphic novel, Shoplifters Will Be Liquidated by Patrick Kinlan and Stefano Simeon. Simeon? I'm not sure why this has such a low score on Goodreads. I really liked it. It's a future where everything, every aspect of life, this one mega retailer has their hand in it. Um, I'm sure Amazon's trying to do that. Amazon is trying to do that. Like, I really can't think of one arena. I mean, maybe Amazon hasn't started selling cattle yet, or like livestock, but like everything else, I feel like they've gotten their hand in, because they sell meat, so or at least one of their companies does, whatever. Uh, but there's a whole subculture where there are people who live outside of its purview, but also like in its purview. I guess looking back on it, I wish they would have explained that connection more, or we would have got more of a sense of. I guess there was kind of like a lingering sense of, oh, maybe it'll be a revolution. I guess a bit, but I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Um, I thought it was the whole story, the whole tension of the story was really fun. Um, what commentary there was again was fun, so I gave it 4 stars. And I would recommend that book. Next book I read was Japan Connecting You to Wonderlands by Takashi Sato, and this was a guidebook if you're traveling in Japan, essentially. Images, photography, lovely, beautiful. Um, it's very much of its time and aware, because the whole thing was, here are the websites if you want to go visit this specific location, X, Y, and Z. And I think a lot of times with the media, you have a given image of a country in your mind, which is why a lot of people travel, blah blah blah. But I think guidebooks are also a great way to travel. Guidebooks, maps, photography are a way to see places you haven't necessarily connected with that imagery that the media might have formed, that the popular images you keep seeing. Like, obviously, you think of Japan, you think of Tokyo, you think of very high tech things, or you think of some rural areas, but usually the rural areas around shrines and whatnot. Or even if it's not around shrines, it's again usually the same type of rural areas. But you know, the book takes you in a Four Seasons um, account of Japan. So that was really fun, and I gave that one 5 stars. That it was. I felt like I was traveling in Tokyo. I felt like if I had this book either before a trip to Tokyo or during a trip to Tokyo, I'd be well prepared for traveling. I'd be aware of the system of how to get around and do things, or maybe where I should look at the very least, or So I enjoyed this book, um, and if you like travel, I'd suggest it. If they end up coming out with a series being um, connecting you to Wonderlands, or whatever a series, then I think so. I don't think they will. I think it's a Japan specific book, but who knows? I'd love to read more of these, but I gave that one 5 stars. Next book I read was The Habsburgs to Rule the World by Martin Roddy. Rady. I, like many people, know generally of the Habsburgs. The Habsburg Chin is a thing that comes to mind fast. Austro-Hungarian Empire, the murder, the assassination or of Franz Ferdinand, I think his name is. Anyway, so I was, the history, European history is always interesting to me, because what I know of it mostly is through the lens of colonial and post-colonial America. So um, this was interesting to read. I found a lot of things of dynasty making interesting, and definitely it was a well detailed account of the history of this lineage. Uh, More detailed, getting into the middle of the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. Um, but I did think it was a bit, maybe it read a bit pro Habsburg, or like like we're taking the viewpoint of understanding how they work towards the greatness of their line, which, okay, I guess it's a way to be, but also it's weird to read about this lineage, this house that had so much influence on the modern world in terms of states and politics, and those respective states and politics and their effects on in the new world and the old world, and not think of the concurrent atrocities that they had their hand in. The book read a bit too positive for me, a bit too pro Habsburg. I guess you could say, oh, we're really only focusing on the Habsburg themselves, but also like no. So I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed the read. It took me forever to read it, but I enjoyed it. But again, it read too Habsburg for me. So yes, 4 stars. The next book I read was The Chinese Medicine Companion: A Modern Guide to Ancient Healing by Misha Ruth Cohen. I gave this one 5 stars. Um, my background is in pharmacy, and a couple of times I've been told, either by supervisor or asked by supervisor or medical professional, to look into interactions with alternative medicine. And it's very hard because, generally speaking, Western world US is not super interested in looking at CAM, but CAM being complementary and alternative medicine. But the data is sparse. Um, so I always like learning about alternative modalities of medicine and how they work, or how that thought behind the mechanisms of action, or the mechanisms of treatment. So I thought this was a great book for an introduction into Chinese medicine. On the one hand, good over the overlap with allopathic medicine and osteopathic medicine even was a lot. So I was shocked at that. I was like, okay, that's fun, that's great. Not super surprising because Chinese medicine is very old, and very established and very old. Um, but then also it's like other aspects of the treatment system, very complicated, very complicated. So, um, newfound respect. I thought it was great for introductory learning, and seeing what might be used, and then thinking about how that might interact with other things. So that was great. I thought I gave that 5 stars. Next book I read, and I keep saying read. Next book I finished was Candy Hearts by Tommy Siegel, and this was a graphic novel, I guess a comic book collection. I don't know. Um, and it's coming out next year in February. I thought it was really funny. It was like a modern take, just a take on relationships, as told through Candy Hearts, and that's all I'm gonna say. I thought it was really great. So, 5 stars for that book. And the final book I read in the month of October was A Golden Fury, by Samantha Coe, Co- Coe. Apologies for mispronunciations all around. Um, this, you know, oh, alchemists during the French Revolution. was really what I had going in mind when I started reading it. And then it's, like secret, secret production of, ooh, this alchemical peak, whatever. And I was very excited. I was very primed. I was ready. Um, but no, French Revolution played in the most basic sense. It played. It was just, plot device. Um, the men were generally trash all around, and then there was no real like justice. It was just annoying, and the protagonist was annoying herself and super naive, because you can't have a smart, educated YA protagonist who's not naive. It won't work. It won't. There was no plot then. There's no plot. So I read it, like with most books. Once I'm in it, I'm in it. So I read it, but I didn't necessarily like it as much as I hoped I would. So I gave this one 3 stars. I thought it had potential that was lost. So, um, who would like this book? Well, I don't know. Three stars. 3 stars. So thanks for watching. That's 11 books finished in the month of October. I will be starting a new channel soon where I might be doing one-off um, reviews, singular book reviews, and other book-related stuff. But I think I'll keep doing recaps on this channel for the moment. But yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye.